What if I told you that walking away in silence says more than 1,000 desperate words ever could? She thought you'd chase, that you'd call, text, plead. She expected the chaos of heartbreak to pull you into her orbit, but instead you vanished, and with that silence, you shattered her illusion of control. This isn't weakness, it's discipline. It's the moment you realized that your value isn't proven by how loudly you fight to stay, but how powerfully you choose to walk away. Pain doesn't define you. It refines you. If you let it, your silence isn't absence, it's elevation. Right now, you're at a crossroads. You can collapse under the weight of rejection or rise and become untouchable. Someone she no longer understands, but can't ignore. Now, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications and comment below. I mastered myself when I walked away. Let's begin. Number 1. The quiet that breaks control. She walked away, and your first instinct was to speak, to defend yourself, to explain, to scream that you deserved better. But you didn't. You stayed silent. And that silence, though heavy, became the beginning of your power. Because when the world expects noise, tears, anger, begging, and you offer none, it shifts the ground beneath their feet. This isn't weakness, it's precision. The silence of a man who no longer plays by emotional rules he didn't write. When you withhold reaction, you deny her the control she once had. She left expecting a performance, an outpouring of pain that would validate her role as the one with power, but instead she's met with stillness. And in that stillness, something unfamiliar rises. Doubt. You see, emotional chaos is easy to manipulate. It's predictable. But your composure is a puzzle. She doesn't know what you're thinking, feeling, planning, and that unnerves her. Because silence, when intentional, isn't absence, it's strategy. You're no longer a participant in her story, you're writing your own. The Stoics understood this. To not react is to remain free. He who angers you controls you, they taught. And here you've refused to be controlled. You've declined the invitation to dance in her drama. That's not cold, it's sovereign. And yet, this silence isn't about her, it's about you. It's the boundary that keeps your dignity intact, the wall between your peace and her need for attention. It's how you reclaim your emotional center without ever raising your voice. In time, this silence becomes thunder. It echoes in places she never expected. She begins to wonder, why hasn't he said anything? Did I really matter? She replays the moment she walked away, now unsure if she made the right call. Not because you told her anything, but because you told her nothing. That's the paradox. When you refuse to explain, your absence says more than any words ever could. So let the silence stand. Let it stretch. Let it do the work your words never could. Not to hurt her, but to heal you. If you've chosen to reclaim power through stillness, not sound, leave your mark below. My silence is not retreat, it's self-respect. Number 2. Collapse isn't the end, it's the beginning of rebirth. The moment she left, it felt like the floor gave way beneath you. Everything cracked, the certainty, the routine, the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd stay. What followed wasn't just heartbreak, it was collapse. You lost more than love. You lost the shape of your identity. And yet, as everything crumbled, something else quietly began. The chance to rebuild without her at the center. That collapse wasn't failure. It was revelation. Because only in the breaking do you see what was hollow to begin with. How much of your self-worth was built on her validation? How much of your peace was borrowed from her presence? And when that scaffolding fell, it hurt. But it also revealed the parts of you that were never really yours to begin with. This is where the Stoic path begins. You stop asking why she left. You stop blaming yourself. You understand that sometimes people leave not because you're lacking, but because they crave control. And the most threatening thing to someone like that A man who doesn't beg for closure. A man who lets her go without chasing. So the collapse becomes your catalyst. The silence you once feared becomes your sanctuary. Every painful pang turns into a signal that you're waking up, not just from a relationship, but from an illusion. You thought her staying would make you whole. Now you realize her leaving gave you the opportunity to finally do it yourself. And this is the turning point. You stop reaching for her and you start reaching inward. The man who was once emotionally dependent now becomes emotionally sovereign. You shift from a story of loss to one of redefinition, not because the pain has disappeared, but because it has changed direction. It no longer seeks her. It builds you. Think of this moment not as a grave, but as ground. Ground where something new can take root, where the man you were can give way to the man you are becoming. Steadier, quieter, unshakable. She may never see that version of you. She may never deserve to. And that's the point. Because this new life isn't being built to prove her wrong. It's being built because you finally realized you don't need her to be right. If you're rising from collapse, not with noise but with purpose, leave your mark below. I wasn't destroyed. I was cleared for rebirth. Number 3. The power of saying nothing at all. You want to explain, to tell her she misunderstood you, to pour out all the reasons why you were worth staying for. It's natural when someone leaves, we reach for clarity, for validation, for any chance to rewrite the narrative. But the urge to explain is often disguised desperation. And the truth is, she isn't waiting for your words. She's already written her version of the story. No explanation will change that. No perfectly crafted message will flip the script in your favor. She doesn't want understanding, she wants control, and every time you explain yourself, you give her more of it. You let her step back into the role of emotional gatekeeper, the one who decides what is valid, what is forgivable, what is true. But you're not here to audition for closure. You're here to reclaim your voice by choosing not to use it. Stoicism teaches restraint, not to suppress the truth, but to protect it. Your emotions, your perspective, your pain, these aren't hers to access anymore. When she walked away, she forfeited the right to your inner world, and your silence becomes a form of sacred boundary. It says, without drama, you don't get to know me anymore. You don't owe her understanding. You don't need to prove you were good. You already were. And if she couldn't see that, then words won't help. Sometimes, the highest form of self-respect is simply closing the door and walking away without a word. No anger, no justification, just peace. Think of silence not as absence, but as elevation. It makes you unreadable, mysterious, whole. It denies her the satisfaction of clarity and forces her to wonder, and in that wondering, she feels what words could never make her feel: uncertainty, doubt, regret. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. And for you, silence is not avoidance, it's a declaration that your value isn't up for negotiation, that your worth doesn't require her agreement, that your story moves forward with or without her understanding. So hold the line, say nothing, let your life become the loudest thing she never hears. If you've chosen to be unreadable rather than explainable, comment below. I don't clarify, I close the chapter in silence. Number 4, stop giving to be seen. That's not love, that's submission. You think if you give more, she'll return. If you prove your loyalty, if you show how deeply you feel, if you just hold on long enough, she'll see it, appreciate it, and come back. But this isn't love. This is self-betrayal dressed up as devotion. The more you pour into someone who has already walked away, the more you dilute your own worth, and what was once love becomes imbalance, desperation, noise. She doesn't need more affection, she needs space. And if she's pulled away, giving her more only reminds her why she left. Because when someone starts to drift, clinging to them doesn't anchor the relationship, it sinks it. You can't love someone into staying if they've already decided to go. The Stoics teach that value is never proven through excess, it's revealed through restraint. By standing firm in who you are, regardless of how others receive you. When you continue to give love in hopes of being seen, you place your self-worth in their hands, and that transaction always costs you more than it gives. Think of attraction like gravity. It doesn't beg, it doesn't perform, it simply exists, undeniable and quiet. When you stop chasing, when you return to your own orbit, your goals, your peace, your path, that's when you become magnetic, not because you tried harder, but because you stopped needing to. The man who can love deeply but walk away quietly is the one who commands respect. He doesn't need to be chosen, he chooses. He doesn't over-explain his heart, he simply protects it. And here's the truth. Every time you try to earn love that should be freely given, you teach her to value you less. But when you remove your attention, when you retreat to your own mission, something shifts. The silence grows loud. The absence becomes weight. And in that space, she realizes what she once had, but can no longer reach. This isn't about revenge, it's about realignment. Stop giving in hopes of being enough. Start building so you never have to beg again. If you've decided to stop performing and start preserving your value, leave your reflection below. I no longer give to be seen. I walk in my worth. Number 5. The strongest emotion is the one you don't show. She texts you something cold, or maybe she doesn't text at all. You see her story, designed perhaps to get a reaction, and for a moment your heart jumps, your fingers itch, you feel the urge to reply, to respond, to re-enter the game. But then you stop, you breathe, you choose silence. Not because you don't feel, but because you've learned that real strength is invisible. This is the moment Stoicism was made for, when every part of you wants to react, and you don't. The old you would have snapped, would have reached out with fire or sorrow or guilt. But now you understand. Every time you react emotionally, you confirm that she still holds sway, that she can still stir something inside you, that you're still within reach. But not anymore. Your emotions belong to you now. They're not on display, not accessible on demand. You can feel everything. Disappointment, confusion, anger, and still choose not to let it surface. That is mastery. And to someone who expects you to play the same old game, that control is disarming, even frightening. You're no longer reacting, you're observing, not out of coldness but clarity. You've realized that nothing reveals your power more than refusing to let anyone else command your state of mind. In her silence, you don't unravel. In her bait, you don't bite. In her drama, you don't dance. And the paradox is this: your lack of reaction becomes louder than any reply ever could. She notices, she starts to wonder. Did he really move on? Has he stopped caring? The absence of emotion becomes a statement of transformation. You're no longer the man she used to provoke. You've evolved into someone untouchable. Let that become your edge. Not indifference, but internal command. Not apathy, but anchored calm. When she sees she can no longer move you, she begins to feel the gravity of what she lost. Not the attention, but the access. So stay grounded, let the waves crash, and remain the stone beneath. If you've chosen emotional discipline over emotional display, leave your words below. I own my emotions, they no longer own me. Number 6. Disappearing is not revenge, it's recovery. You used to watch from afar, check if she posted, wonder who she was with, read her silence like it was a code you just hadn't cracked yet. And in doing so, you kept yourself tethered to her, to hope, to a loop that only fed your pain. You were still there, even after she had left. But now you understand. The most powerful move isn't noise, it's absence. You don't fade away to punish, you vanish to protect. There's no announcement, no dramatic goodbye, just distance. Stillness. The quiet disappearance of a man who finally remembers what he deserves. Because as long as you remain in her orbit, watching, waiting, reacting, you are still playing a role in her story. But your healing begins the moment you stop showing up for a script that no longer serves you. Stoicism teaches withdrawal not out of bitterness, but out of focus. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Let her think you don't care. Let her wonder why you stopped watching, why your name no longer appears, why your presence disappeared like mist. That is not weakness, it's wisdom." You're not doing this for effect. You're doing it for energy. Every second you use to spend thinking of her is now fuel for something better, your strength, your vision, your future. You're not punishing her with your silence. You're preserving yourself through it. And here's what makes it powerful, the contrast. You were once always there, now you're not. You were once predictable, now you're unavailable. The very access she took for granted becomes the void that unsettles her. But more importantly, it becomes the space in which you finally start to breathe again. Disappearance is not escape, it's decision. It's you stepping back into yourself, choosing to no longer hand your peace to someone who didn't protect it. You disappear because being seen by her is no longer your goal. Being whole without her is. If you've chosen silence not as punishment but as a path back to yourself, speak it clearly below. I disappeared to remember who I am. Number 7. Pain is the price of becoming someone new. There's a moment after she's gone where everything feels unbearable. Not just the loss of her, but the hollow that takes her place. The world you built, every memory, every plan, every familiar touch collapses into a silence that screams. And in that void you think, this pain will break me, but what if it doesn't? What if it builds you? You see, you've been told that pain is something to avoid, something that means something went wrong. But Stoicism flips that idea on its head. It says pain is not a punishment, it's a portal, a passage through which you stop being who you were and begin becoming who you must be. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." This ache you're feeling, it's your training ground. She's not the lesson, you are. The strength you're about to discover, it doesn't come from getting her back. It comes from deciding you never needed her to be whole in the first place. That the agony she left behind is not the wreckage of who you were, but the raw material of who you're becoming. It's tempting to numb it, to run, to drown it in distractions, new women, mindless scrolling, but the only way through it is through it. Sit in the discomfort, breathe into the longing, and instead of asking why did she leave, ask, what does this pain want to teach me? Pain is a fire. It will consume you if you stand still. But if you move through it with purpose, it will forge you into someone wiser, sharper, still, into the kind of man who no longer needs to be chosen because he has already chosen himself. And here's what no one tells you. When you emerge from this scarred but intact, no one can touch you the same way again. Not because you're closed off, but because you've seen the bottom, you've stood in the storm, and you've walked out of it alone, taller, quieter, unshakable. So don't waste this pain. Let it shape you. Let it define a new path. One where your heart is not fragile, but forged. If you're turning heartbreak into heat, and heat into strength, say it below. This pain doesn't define me, it refines me. Number 8. This isn't coldness, it's command. They'll say you've changed, that you've grown distant, that you've become cold. But what they're really feeling is your self-control, your refusal to react, to explain, to bleed for someone else's understanding. And for those who once held power over your emotions, that control is threatening, because they can no longer predict you, no longer pull you back with a simple message or a subtle guilt. This is not the absence of feeling, it's the presence of discipline. You still feel everything, the weight of the silence, the sting of the memory, the impulse to reach out, but you don't move. You sit with it, and in that stillness, something rare happens. You master what once mastered you. Stoicism never promised a numb heart. It promised an anchored one. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events, and that's what you've chosen." Instead of letting her words, or worse, her silence, decide how your day will feel, you've taken that power back. You've become the one who governs your peace. They call it cold because it no longer burns the way it used to. You used to spark at every sign from her, every delay in response, every breadcrumb of attention. Now you respond with calm, not indifference, but detachment, not bitterness, but boundaries. And that shift is what separates the broken from the rebuilt. When she reaches out again, whether out of curiosity or guilt, she'll find a different man, one who doesn't rush to reply, one whose worth is no longer offered up for validation, one who, through silence and structure, has found a deeper sense of self than any relationship ever gave him. That's what real strength looks like. Quiet, grounded, unmoved by the emotional chaos of others. She may not understand it, she may even resent it, but she'll feel it. Because nothing speaks louder than a man who no longer needs to explain himself to be at peace. But this isn't the story of a man going cold, it's the story of a man coming home to himself, and in that return, everything changes. Not just how she sees you, but how you see you. If you've learned to feel without reacting, to stay soft inside but steel on the outside, then speak it clearly, below. My calm is not coldness, it's control. Number 9. When you're gone, she finally notices what stayed. For so long you were always there, always available, always responding, always reaching out even when she drifted further. Your presence became predictable, expected, background noise in her story, and in that familiarity she forgot what it meant to lose you. She mistook your consistency for permanence, your attention for obligation, but then, one day, you stopped showing up. And that's when everything started to shift. Not with drama, not with anger, just with absence. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't slam doors or send long messages, but simply vanishes. A silence that doesn't ask to be noticed, but can't be ignored. And suddenly she feels it. Not the noise of your attention, but the weight of your disappearance. Stoicism teaches us that impact is not always made through action. Sometimes the deepest imprint is made by removal. You don't have to say a word, you don't have to prove anything. You simply stop participating in the dynamic that once drained you, and in doing so, you force her to face the echo of a man who no longer chases, no longer waits, no longer needs her recognition to stand tall. And while she scrambles for new distractions, something lingers. The space you once filled can't be replaced so easily, because you weren't just another man. You were the one who stayed when she pushed, listened when she withdrew, believed when she doubted herself. But she didn't feel your depth when you were near. She only feels it now that it's gone. This isn't about revenge. This is about self-respect. You walked away not to hurt her, but to stop hurting yourself. And in that decision, you shifted from someone she assumed would always be around to someone she's no longer allowed to access. Not because you hate her, but because you finally love yourself more. You're not trying to make her miss you. That's just the byproduct. What you're really doing is building a world where her presence is no longer a factor. A life so complete, so full of movement and purpose, that her absence is no longer something you measure your worth by. She once thought you were hers to return to. Now she knows. You're not even looking back. If your silence has become the boundary that reclaims your dignity, speak it with certainty. I'm not absent out of spite. I'm absent because I've moved on. Number 10. You're not waiting to be chosen anymore. You're choosing. There was a time you sat quietly, hoping she'd pick you again. You measured your days by her responses, your worth by her attention. And each moment of silence from her felt like judgment, like maybe you hadn't done enough, hadn't been enough. But that version of you, the man who waited, who longed, who placed his value in someone else's hands, no longer exists. Because something cracked. Maybe it was the way she left, maybe it was the way she looked back at you, like you were a stranger. But in that moment of loss, something else emerged. A question: why am I giving my power to someone who made me a second choice? And the answer was a quiet decision: no more. Stoicism teaches that self-respect is not something we ask for, it's something we live. It shows up in the way you carry yourself, in the standards you set, in the people you allow into your orbit. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." And now you've stopped waiting to be claimed. You've started becoming the man who claims his own life. You're no longer auditioning for love. You're curating your peace. The woman you once needed approval from is now just one thread in the larger fabric of your journey. You've stopped wondering if she'll come back. You've started asking, is she even worthy of the man I'm becoming? This is the turning point. Not from bitterness, but from clarity. You choose who gets your time. You choose who walks beside you. You choose who has earned access to the version of you that rose from heartbreak with sharper eyes and stronger boundaries. She may notice, she may try to circle back, but this time it's not about whether she wants you again, it's about whether you want her in the life you've rebuilt without her. You are no longer the echo, you are the voice. You are no longer seeking entry, you are setting the door, and only those who bring value, peace, and reciprocity may walk through it. If you've stepped into the role of your own protector, your own selector, leave your truth below. I no longer wait to be chosen, I choose. You began this path thinking silence was defeat, but now you see it was your breakthrough. You didn't chase, not because you didn't care, but because you finally cared enough about yourself. She didn't lose you when she walked away. She lost you the moment you chose yourself over validation. If you're ready to keep walking this path of strength, like this video, subscribe and comment below. I am unstoppable. Keep rising, keep moving, because the man who disappears in silence often returns as someone they can no longer reach.